Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Oneness Junkie podcast, hosted by me, Lydia Smith, a self-proclaimed Oneness Junkie. Oneness Junkie is a place to be inspired, encouraged, and supported. Learn from the individuals who are working to make the world a better place. Let's meet today's guest. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. For today's episode, I'm so excited to introduce you to Dr. Brett Franson. He's a chiropractor, and he lets me call him Brett. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you, Lydia.
I'm so glad to have you today. So I want to just give a little background about how I met Brett. I was in a car accident in 2004 and I had never been to a chiropractor before, but I had met Brett through one of his talks and got his business card. And then like a week later, all of a sudden I needed a chiropractor. It was like another divine intervention. You know, the universe, God was providing me with the resources I needed prior to needing them. And so I reached out to him and I said, I don't really know how this works. And I've never been to a chiropractor before. You know, can you help me? And he was like, oh, come see me. So Brett, we met in 2004 and I'm so grateful for the experience that I had of you. And I want to introduce my audience to you, your work, and just chiropractic in general, because it was such a benefit to me and has been in my life that I want everyone else to understand if it's something that they feel resonant with. Maybe there's a chiropractor locally where they are that they can get similar benefits. So first of all, I'd like the audience to get to know you. So can you just share a little bit about your background, how you got into, where you came from, how you got into chiropractic, and where you are and what you're doing today? Can you do that for our audience?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Awesome.
I mean, I was born and raised in a small town in North Dakota. And in science class in high school, when I was about 14 years old, I took an occupational aptitude test. You know, you fill in the little scantrons and put into a computer and it spits out what you were most suited for.
Scantrons.
Yeah, I remember scantrons.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves, aren't we?
Oh my God, yeah, don't remind me. And it came out that they gave me the top 10 things that I was most suited for at that time. And number 7 was chiropractor. And I thought, well, I didn't know much about it. I knew it was a doctor. They help people. My mom went to one, but I didn't really know much about it. I knew it wasn't about drugs and surgery. And it was a doctor. I thought, me, a doctor? I never had contemplated the possibility that's what I would do with my life. And so that kind of sparked the interest. And that's when I made the decision. I was 14 years old.
Wow.
And I really only looked back once. And that was when I got a hold of the curriculum, the actual educational process for a chiropractor. I was like, holy smokes, that's a lot. And so I started like, man, I don't know. That's a lot of school. That's a lot of tough stuff. And so I thought maybe I should just go do massage therapy because that wouldn't take as long and it wasn't as involved. And my mom told me, if you don't go for the gold, you'll never know. And that's been kind of a theme in my life too, moving forward, is that I have that hard time not knowing. You know, it's like, if I would have just done it, then what would have occurred? You know how you just kind of got to see things through?
Yeah, that was your motivation.
And it was. So then I was like, okay, recommit. And by the age of 23, I had my doctor's degree.
Wow. Well, tell me and everyone else, what is a lot? What did you have to do to get the chiropractic doctor status?
I mean, all the basic sciences and humanities, and then chiropractic college itself it's intense, all the different ologies. I mean, it's basically medical school education. We just have a different philosophy and approach to healthcare than they do. But anatomy and physiology and biochemistry are anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. It doesn't matter what type of doctor you are, that's the facts, and those have to be studied and learned. And that's one of the things that, after 30 years of doing this, I've come to realize that your typical person doesn't have a lot of anatomy and physiology background, and understandably so. That stuff's kind of for like nerds like me, right? So we all have our thing. And so now it's more of just letting people know how their body works. And I found that once they just understand how the thing works, chiropractic just makes natural sense.
Yes. And that's one thing that I really appreciated about you because I was new to chiropractic when I came to see you. And you are so good about teaching. And I've just found when I go to regular doctors, they don't bother spending the time, educating me or
I
the
hear that a lot.
patient.
I hear
Yeah.
that a lot.
And so, one of the things that was so fascinating for me about working with you was how much you were willing to teach me and help me understand, what was going on with the body. So, can you give our, and I just remember you doing this for me. So, I want you to share it with our audience. Can you just kind of explain what chiropractic is? I know people think, and I probably did too, they call you bone crackers, and we know that that's that's not even
I've heard that.
possible. How
I've
could
heard
you be
what do they call
breaking
them?
bones?
Euphemisms? Don't they call those euphemisms? I think. Yeah, I've heard it all. It's okay.
Oh wait, give me
When
another one.
I'll probably
What?
do it. When I was younger and I was a little bit, more here, yeah, I took those things personal and I got all hyped up and sensitive about it or defend myself. But over the years, you start to realize it's not a reflection of me or my profession. It's just representation of that individual's level of understanding of our
Right,
profession.
and perception, right? So
Yeah.
wait, give me another one besides bone cracker. What's one that you've heard? Let's make the audience laugh.
Oh, witch doctor, voodoo guy.
Oh, snake oil salesman.
Snake oil, yeah, those, yeah, back cracker, bone crusher, yeah, I don't, I
Okay.
just don't even try to remember them. There's so many. That's funny.
I think we got enough of those. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
people get really creative. It's pretty cool.
That's good for them. So share with us, what is chiropractic? Because I know you taught me what the actual term meant. So I'm going to let you explain to them what you
Sure.
already taught me years ago.
And to be upfront, I mean, there's a lot of different levels and angles we can look at to describe it, depending on who you talk to. But I guess we just start with some of the basics. What is chiropractic really about? Well, I mean, there's the science, the body, how it works. There's a philosophy. We believe that the body is a self-healing, self-regulating, pretty much an autonomous system. And chiropractic is also an art form. So there's three branches of it: the science, the philosophy, and the art. Essentially how we look at it is, since your brain controls your body, and it does that by sending and receiving signals up and down your spinal cord, going out to all your body parts, and all your body parts send signals back into your spinal cord up to your brain. It makes sense to think that if your spine has lost some of the normal function and alignment, that it could have some interference with that connection between your brain and your body. And if there's interference in that connection, then the nervous system's either going to function too much or not enough. You with me so far?
Yes. And I remember you used the analogy of, imagine a drain. And if the hair is in the drain, the flow of the water is slower.
Okay.
But when you remove the hair from the drain, the flow is stronger. So that really stuck with me when you explained it that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of different little metaphors and analogies that we use. Like if you think of the safety pin cycle is a real common one. When the safety pins close, there's the one end and then the other end, and they're all connected. But you can disconnect. But I don't like that metaphor because you're not really like snapped apart and disconnected. It's just people get overwhelmed. And this last year and a half has been a little rough on folks. And when we get overwhelmed, what do? We try to protect ourselves from that. It's like, oh, it's too much. If it's a bright light, like we retract back from the bright light. If it's too loud of a sound, we retract back from that sound. We tend to contract and react to things that we don't like, that are uncomfortable, that are too stimulating. And if this keeps happening in our lives, which I've asked so many people, would it be safe to say that you have kind of the same patterns of stress over and over and over in your life? And how would you answer that question?
Yes, we repeat our patterns.
The grind, the same things over and over and over. And so we keep contracting and protecting and guarding in response to those stresses over and over and over. And any behavior that you do over and over and over becomes a what?
A pattern.
Yeah, a pattern, also known as a habit. Right, yeah. So people get into these patterns, these habits of the way they're tightening and protecting and guarding against all the stresses that are going on, most of which is just in here. 80% of people's stress is mentally created by themselves. It's the funny thing. And so this pattern caused people to tighten up and lock up, and pretty soon folks are just twisted up by their lives. And chiropractor's job is to find out how they're twisted up, and by hand, chiropractic means done by hand, which you remember, you apply a small force in the spine to get it to let go of those patterns of stored stress in the system, so it can unlock that pressure and the body will resume functioning more normally. And when it functions more normally, it tends to repair itself to the level of its ability.
And what's the term that you call that when you're all pent up?
Yeah, subluxation is the term that we use, although that's subluxation, subluxated is the term I prefer, because that's a subluxation is like a thing, like there's a bone in your spine out of place, pinch a nerve, and that's not technically accurate. But subluxated is a term that I like to use because it describes a state that a person's in. You're either in a calm state or you're in a stressed out state. And so when a person's subluxated, they're just in a stressed out state. They can't sleep, they ache, they hurt, they feel old. Then if that goes on long enough, it becomes a problem. And so if we can discover those patterns of stress that are stored in their system and unlock it and set it free, their body just starts to function more normally. And then when that happens, a lot of those other issues that they have seem to magically clear up. It's probably why I get called witch doctor all the time.
Well, I wouldn't call you that. You don't look like a witch.
I like it. I think it's a term of endearment, quite honestly. I really do.
You don't look like a witch to me. Anyway, so I was thinking about people having stress, and there's so much stress out there, and some other teachings that I'm exposing myself to talk about stress creates disease in the body. And
Sure.
if you could find a way to relieve the stress and the tension in the body, and chiropractic seems like, a body work option, then, you just overall make your body healthier, right? It's more of a wellness behavior.
Yeah, well, I mean, how else could I put it? It's like when we're overwhelmed, okay? Yeah, we're just locked up inside. We tighten up. I deal with people all the time that are like on the ragged edge. They got it all together here. Like, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. But when you sit down and when you sit down and really just ask them, what's going on with you? And most people will tell me all their symptoms up front. And I totally understand. I mean, I get it. You've got symptoms. But then I'll ask them another question, like, what's really going on with you? I mean, like, as a person, what are you dealing with? And man, I've been surprised by that basic question over the last, almost 20 years that I've been asking that particular question. People crack. I mean, they open up and they'll let me know what's really going on. And some of the things I've heard, people go through a lot of rough stuff, man. It's really unbelievable. Sometimes some of the things people have to endure.
I know. And that was so integral in my life, laying face down on your chiropractor table and you putting your hand on my back and asking, what's really going on with you? And I broke open, and I remember, like, you can't control your emotions, like tears just started flowing. And what was so great about you is that you were holding the space for that. You really wanted me and your patients to release. And that was, unfortunately, sometimes that's part of it. And that
hard
was
to let go sometimes, Lydia. It's hard to let go.
That was amazing. And, it was a safe space for that to happen. And one thing I want to share about you that is also unique is you do a lot of that question asking. You don't do a lot of the talking. You ask the questions because you teach that we know the answers, that our body knows the answers. You're just the facilitator in getting those answers released. And that was...
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, I still talk a little bit way too much, but I'm working on
that. I would just jump in and take over. No, anyway.
Yeah, you got to ask questions and give people space to really answer. And, and it's a skill. It takes a lot of practice. I've really screwed that up over the years because you learn things and you try things and you're just trying to help the patient the best way that you can. But you got to be able to connect with them, get them to open up, and you got to earn a person's trust, because chiropractic, most people come in, they're scared, especially you newbies. A lot of them are scared. Not all. People are a lot more, I guess I'd
Open,
say
like
more open to it
open.
now than ever before. I guess it's
Yeah.
because more chiropractors have been posting online what we do, so the public really gets to see it. And here's a little funny factoid for you. Ready? It turns out that during the pandemic, the most watched YouTube videos were what they call chiropractic crunch videos.
Wow.
People getting adjusted on camera and the sound effects. It seemed to be one of the most popular things on the internet during the pandemic. I
Oh
found
my
that very fascinating.
goodness. That was
Yeah.
very fascinating. Everybody
Yeah.
was
Like, really?
missing
The
their
thing that I
favorite
thought people are
chiropractor.
so scared of, they're so intrigued by. Interesting.
It is interesting. It's even more interesting when you actually can go and get it done because it feels good. There's
Well,
actually,
yeah, because if you face the fear and then you have an outcome that is totally incongruent with what you believe is going to happen that made you scared, yeah, I'll be honest, this is no joke, and I'm not, patting myself on the back, but the most common word I hear spoken in my office is wow. I mean, that's all the time, wow, I didn't expect that, like, wow. And I'm like, okay. It's just there's such a shock. People come in with this perspective, and then they have the actual experience, and it's so different than what they expected. It's natural for them to just go, oh, wow. And then the next second thing is, oh my God, I feel so much lighter.
yeah. So one of the things that you taught me going to see you as much as I did, and by the way, I had that car accident, so I was taking an unconventional approach to my healing because I had pain. And I know that you would say most of your patients come for the first time because there's some level of pain that they identify with, right? That's just the
Typically,
majority
that's
of
what
people.
drives people to behave differently, to seek out some help. Pain's a great
Exactly.
motivator, I got to say.
Exactly. Pain is a motivator for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
pain pushes you, but desire for something better pulls you. But it seems like only about 15% of the population is pulled by something that they want greater for themselves, versus 85% of the population is more driven by pain that pushes them to do something that they wouldn't otherwise. Just, I guess, maybe it's just human nature.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about, you would educate me that I love this saying, and it's just sat with me or stayed with me ever since I heard it from you. Your issues are in your tissues. And you would talk about how we're our humanness is like layers of an onion. And also explain to the audience, I'm just bringing this topic up, we can discuss it, but explain to the audience about how the body will integrate pain at different levels. I remember you teaching me that. So pain, you will only experience what you're experiencing, but then do you know what where I'm going with this, that how you used to talk about how the body, when I had the car accident, my body only could handle a certain level of pain, and then I was releasing it, right? So talk about that, because that was really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, in some circles, the word integration is used. When you take in a big shock to the system, you know me and my metaphors. It's Thanksgiving, so I'll use a Thanksgiving metaphor. Okay. When you go to Thanksgiving dinner and you eat all that food, there's a bunch of food that doesn't get eaten. What do we call that?
Leftovers.
Leftovers. That's right, leftovers. And so what do we do with the leftovers? We pack them into little containers and we stuff them in the fridge. All right. So then they sit in there, and then we nibble off of that for the next several days. Sound about right? You can relate?
Right.
Okay. So now we'll relate that to how the body works, how our mind works, is that we're all dealing with a whole lot of stress every single day, but there's only so much that any individual can deal with at any time in their life. Sometimes you can deal with more, sometimes you can't deal with so much, depending upon where you're at and how well you're taking care of yourself. However, if you're dealing with more than you can tolerate, what do you do with that extra energy, that extra stimulus? You're not going to waste it. I mean, energy is like the most precious commodity in the universe. So what's your system do with it? It doesn't waste the energy. It stores it as leftovers. And our body is like that refrigerator. We stuff everything inside that we can't deal with at the time, or maybe that we don't want to deal with at the time. We want to deny it. We don't want to pay attention to it. We don't want to open up Pandora's box and really dig in and deal with some of the things that have happened in our past or some of our fears moving forward. So we just rather stuff that inside. So where does that go? I mean, does it actually stuffed in there? I mean, I don't know. But energetically, we do carry a whole lot of past traumas and stresses. I guess a more modern term that expresses this pretty well would be PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. People experience something that's so overwhelming, they just can't integrate it, can't process at a time. And who could? Some of the things people deal with, it's unbelievable. And so what do you do with all that unresolved emotional pain and stress? You bury it. And those are your issues. And you bury it in your tissues. And it becomes like a tension pattern in a person. And you look as people get older, or people who go through a whole lot, like you may have known somebody for a while, and then you didn't see them for many years. And during those many years, they went through a lot of hell. And then you see them, you're like, oh my God, what happened to you? You can see they've aged dramatically, because there's so much of that unresolved emotional pain, unresolved issues, unresolved relationship damages, things of that nature that we just carry around in our system. You with me so far?
I'm totally with you.
Yeah. So that shows up as tension patterns. And again, that's why I say life twists us up. We just keep twisting and twisting and twisting and twisting and twisting. And people tend to twist the same way that they've twisted up in the past. There's kind of like once you crush a bottle, crush it, it tends to crush the same way every time. People are kind of the same way. So much so that the people closest to them know their buttons. Okay? They know that if they push that button, that person's going to react that way. Because people kind of can be predictable a little way because of how we twist up and how we store all those stresses in our systems. That's where that issues in the tissues. I didn't come up with that, to be honest. I remember hearing that somewhere, and it clicked for me like it clicked for you. I was like, that's a really clear, concise way of expressing something in an unusual way. And that's what I've witnessed in practice. I've seen people come in, and when you set their system free, what comes out sometimes is really, really profound, for lack of better words. I've seen people just break down and cry. I've seen people have to get up and go actually, vomit, because so much past stress was buried. And once it was released, it just comes out of them. It's a blessing when it happens. It's something to witness. And all you can do is just sit there in awe and wait for the process to unfold. But that's where the issues and the tissues came.
So as your patient, I want to share a testimony of my experience of that example that you just referred to. So, 13, this because we talked about it, but 13 years before I met you, I witnessed the tragedy of my sister falling 8 stories from the top of a parking garage to her death. And that was so traumatic for me. Of course, I went through therapy, traditional, talked about it. I explained this in another episode where I had thought that I had done all the work and resolved it. And really, I wasn't going to be, just a survivor, but I wanted to thrive in my life. So it was really important to me to, grow beyond that experience. And so obviously, when you're 13 years down the road, you think that that's behind you because you're thriving, you're successful, life is good. When I got on your table and you started to do the chiropractic work, those stored feelings, emotions that were buried and packed up in the little Tupperware containers started to get unraveled. And that spring in me that I didn't know 13 years later needed to be released, things started to get, and I'm going to use the word unearthed because,
good word. Yeah.
Because that I was sharing this with you the other day, this story that I had a dream after being on your table one day. I had a dream that night, and literally the dream was, how dreams can be weird. That sister who passed away was literally coming out of the ground with like the dirt falling from her fingers as she
I remember
was
you telling me about that.
unearthing
Yeah.
out of the dirt of the ground, like she had been buried emotionally. And because of the work I was doing, I actually had a visual of her name was Sharon, is Sharon, and she was coming out of the earth. And I remember talking to you about it and just saying how powerful that metaphor was for me in looking at what needs to be released and what still needs to be healed about something that happened, 13 years ago at that point, back in 2004. So, it is so true what you just said, that we have no idea what our bodies are storing, and we feel stuck in our lives and we don't know how to get unstuck. We don't know why some area of our life may be not working, why we may have some illness, why we may have some disease or something. Um, but it's all energy, right?
A lot of times we're just afraid to deal with the things that are really unpleasant and uncomfortable. A lot of people carry around a lot of unresolved emotional pain from the past. I mean, psychotherapist friends, they talk about, what drives the psychotherapy industry is that people are carrying around a lot of unresolved emotional issues. And in the way I practice, it's just, I'm not a psychotherapist, but because the mind and the body are not separate entities, that what goes on in your psychology as an integral part in your physiology, and then vice versa. Sometimes the person's physiology, how they feel in their body, what's happening, cause them to start thinking things that might be really unpleasant. They get scared. I see that all the time. I have an ache or a pain. Oh my God, what's wrong? There's fear. Or I have this unresolved issue that I haven't dealt with, and it's affecting my thinking. Just yesterday, I had a gal who was scared to take a shower.
Wow.
She was just afraid to get in the shower, which is funny because when I was a kid, I had that same fear. And you know how I overcame it?
You could relate to it.
Well, I didn't really overcome it on purpose. My sisters grabbed me and held me in the shower and made me stand there. And then that fixed me. And so I told this woman, it says, after you leave today, as soon as you get home, go take a 5-minute shower. And immediately she starts expressing all the reasons why she couldn't. And none of them were, pardon the expression, rational. They were like reasons that didn't make any sense. I said, just go jump in the shower for 5 minutes, get wet and towel off. And yeah, it's little things like that. It's amazing. Some of the fears people have, and those fears, those repressed emotional issues hold them back. It keeps them from going out and trying new things. It keeps them from even being able to maybe initiate a relationship. They're too afraid because they've had some things happen in the past that were so painful. And instead of dealing with that, they've buried that. I don't know. I just like to help people kind of, go in there, dig that stuff up, look at it in a new way, because you can't change the past. I learned this. You cannot change the past, but you can change how you interpret the facts of the past. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it that matters.
Exactly. But because we responded to it a certain way in the past, then it almost seems like that's just the way it always is. And not necessarily so. Like, I'll give you one quick example. I know we're kind of short on time, but one quick example. Let's say a child being raised by their parents. One of their parents, or both, work a lot. So the child wants attention from their parents, but work seems to get the parental attention all the time. So the child could easily think that I'm not worthy of my parents' love and affection, but work is. You see? Yeah. So my parents don't really care about me, they care about work. Right. And that can cause that child to have, that causes a child to have all kinds of issues. But when they grow up, they can look back at that and go, oh, it wasn't that my parents didn't love me and that they, work was more valuable to me. It's that they worked so hard to provide for me because they cared for me so much, they were willing to sacrifice a lot of things to be able to provide for me. Well, that's a huge shift.
Right.
From going, I'm not worthy, my parents didn't love me, to my parents loved me so much that they're willing to sacrifice a lot of things just so I had the things that they didn't growing up. I mean, bingo. And that can transform their relationship with their parent. It can heal that relationship. And those issues are also stored in their tissues. And so adjusting the spine and the question asking process, digging deep for folks that are willing to go there. Because I understand some folks who just have an ache or pain, they want me to help them make it go away.
Right.
I get it. That's cool. But for folks that are willing to dig deep and really want to, what we call core healing, not just
Right.
physiological healing, like, oh, I have an injury and it heals, but healing the wounds in our core, the past stuff, the deeper, more profound stuff. I found that to be much more fulfilling work.
I love that term. I have never heard that before. Core healing. That is such a
Yeah,
great term
healing.
and means and has a lot of depth to it. Just the title, core healing.
Well, that's where we bury everything. We just stuff it down in our core. And then I like to make a little connection with it's in our core, which is the cord, the spinal cord,
Oh,
the deepest part inside of us. Our spine's like halfway between our body, side to side, and then front to back, it's halfway. It's right in the middle of our system. And the spinal cord's right in the middle of the spine, intimately connected to it. So that's our core. So when our core, our spine twists up, it affects those core systems that cause us to be connected to ourselves and the world around us. So when our core is twisted up, we're not as connected to ourselves, nor are we as connected to the outside world. So we feel disconnected. And do you know anybody nowadays that they're more connected technologically, but they feel more disconnected sociologically?
right.
Would that be a fair statement?
Especially now since we're having to wear masks everywhere.
Yeah, and then
That doesn't help.
isolation and social distancing and the lockdowns last year, really not good for social creatures.
Right, right. And I think that therapists are, hard to find an appointment because everybody feels like they need
I bet
one.
they're booked solid, but they got to sit
Yeah.
6 feet apart to have the thing. It's like, I don't know, man. That I've just been hearing so much of that, especially the last year and a half. And then people working from home. So just on a more superficial level, people working from home, they thought at first, oh, great thing. And then they realized, oh, I'm at work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they're not sitting in an ergonomically designed chair. They're sitting on their bed, on their couch, at the dining room table, whose chairs are designed to sit there for 20 minutes to eat a meal. Uh, they're all, twisted up like this, looking at their phones and their computers. And it's been rough. As far as postural stress goes, that's been a real wicked monkey this last year and a half.
I stress from looking at the screens all the time. I mean, I have that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay. So, yeah, we are, like you said, we are going to kind of wrap things up. I just really appreciated what you said because I don't think people think about going to a chiropractor for those particular
No,
topics that we were just discussing.
for unresolved emotional issues, like a chiropractor, like that's like my back hurts and you want me to heal my past. Like that's a big chasm to jump across. I get it. I understand. So I just try to meet people where they are, ask them what they really want. But sometimes just in the question asking process, these things will come up. I don't push it. I don't force it.
You're holding the space. You're holding the space
Right.
for people to heal however they are
Right.
meant to heal. And that's what's so great about you. You are not a typical traditional
You can't.
and
It's kind of like the Keebler elves, Lydia. It's like the Keebler elves. You can't rush richness. You can't force it. You can't push people in a place they don't want to go. It's like trying to put a cat in a bathtub. Good luck with that. But if you just hold a space and let them do it for themselves or let them open up, folks that want to heal, it's an organic thing. How about that? It's an organic thing.
Yes. And, I know that you're very humble and, you probably don't call yourself this, but I see you as very gifted. I mean, you're not a traditional, you're not a typical chiropractor. I feel like you're more of an extraordinary human being doing chiropractic work. So that's what's unique about you. You're not just the joint for
Thank you,
15
Lydia.
bucks or whatever. So
Thank you.
I think you get some real work done in your office, and I wanted to honor that by having you on the show. So, in closing, do you have any? Let's bring it back to light and levity. I love the Keebler.
Yeah, I was kind of heavy talk there for a second.
Yeah, I love the Keebler. Now I can think about are those cookies with the chocolate on them, and they're drifting.
I know the chocolate stripes, right? Yeah.
Exactly. That's all the planted that in my head. Okay, so now let's talk about. Do you have anything inspiring? Like, what can you leave our audience with that's going to make them feel good about their day and be happy they listened to this, episode?
Well, first thing I want people to understand is things are not as bad as your mind makes them out to be. Okay. Simply put, yeah, things might be tough, but don't make them worse than they are mentally. Deal with things as they are. And if you can deal with things as they are, you'll find out that things are solvable. What they say, everything's figure outable. Okay. But if you're looking at everything that seems to be wrong in your life all at once, that's a tremendous source of your overwhelming feelings. And that can be overcome real quick. It really can. There's a couple sayings I like. One of them is there's a highway to hell, but a stairway to heaven. Now, highways are easy to drive on, stairways are tough to climb. But if you really want the good stuff in life, you got to be willing to climb that ladder. It's a difficult path, whereas the highway is an easy path. It's real easy to go that way. So most of the time, folks will look at the stairway. Like, I want to get to something better in my life, but they look at the entire staircase all at once. And it's like, oh my God, I got to do all that just to get to there. I'm like, yeah, how about this? What's the next step that you got to take? There's one step in front of you. That's the one you got to take. So if you look at everything you got to deal with in your life and everything moving forward all at once, it's going to overwhelm you. It'll overwhelm me too. It's easy to have that happen. That happens automatically. But I want people to just stop, take a breath for a second, look at where you are just right now. Just that's a mantra I have. In this moment, in this moment. I just keep telling myself, in this moment. And I found that in this moment, things are not as bad as my mind would make them out to be. So folks can just slow down, take the next step in your life, and then the next step and the next step, you won't feel so overwhelmed and you'll be able to make a lot more progress in your life.
Yes. And it reminds me of the power of the now. And of course, Eckhart Tolle wrote that book. I remember you were
That's
reading
where
that.
it's at.
You were reading that right when I met you. And I remember us talking about
Yep. I was really into that material back in those days, and I still love his work. It's between him and Tony Robbins, what two polar opposite kind of people, but there is a common thread there, and I like to ride that common thread.
Yeah. Well, you have both of those sides, to you, as we all do.
As we all do.
So
yeah.
if anyone's curious about who you work with or how to get in touch with you, or just following you on social media or what have you, like how can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty private guy. I kind of keep to myself, but here at my office, it's called Franson Chiropractic. I'm here in the West Chase area of Houston, Texas, and I have a website, fransonchiropractor.com. I would have went with Franson Chiropractic, but somebody already had that. So fransonchiropractor.com, and my phone number is 281-701-1596. People can reach me at that phone number. They can call, they can text, or if they prefer email, it's my name. It's Brett, Brett, Franson, Franson @gmail.com. And they're welcome to contact me anyway if they just have a question, or if they want to schedule a time to come see me. I'm wide open, whatever. I'm here to help.
Great. And with the pandemic and everything, so you're back to regularly seeing patients in office, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So one thing I like to do, I know you said you haven't listened to any of my episodes, so this will be a nice little surprise for you, but I started this thing I came up with this idea called mirror reflections. And I'm the mirror, and I'm going to reflect back to you who you are in the world. So just take it in and enjoy. So you're a light in the world. You are providing great gifts of healing to everyone who experiences you. Your genuineness, your authenticity, your patience, your ability to just allow. Again, I mentioned this, holding the space for people for healing. You really care about your patients and your clients, and your gifts of, like you said, it's a skill, but it's also a gift. You have many gifts, and everyone who works with you can see them. And I know it's hard for us to see the gifts in ourselves sometimes, but I already said it earlier, you're an extraordinary individual. And I'm so grateful that my path in the universe brought me to you, to learn from you, to grow from you, and to experience all that you have been in my life. And I appreciate you. So keep, like I told my other guests, keep on keeping on, because
Oh, thank you very much for that, Lydia. And you've been a light in my life as well. You've helped me at times, and you've put some of my stuff in my face when I needed to be called out on something. No,
hey,
that's
don't tell the audience that. I'm kidding.
that's a
I'm joking.
gift. That's a great. I'm grateful for that. I really
It's a
am.
gift.
Because it takes a strong person to say what needs to be said.
Oh my God. I'm
And
glad
you're
you
a
think
strong
that.
person. That's what I like about you. You have that strength. You don't have a problem saying what needs to be said. And there was times in my life when you challenged me, and you know, it made me a better person. So kudos to you, Lydia. Thank you very much.
I'm glad you appreciate it.
Yourself pat on the back, okay? Yeah.
I didn't know that my mirror was going to be mirrored back at me.
That's what mirrors do.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, if you can dish it out, you better be able to take it.
That is true. That
So
is
I'm
true.
going to receive that with all the beauty and genuineness that you provided it, and that you accepted my reflection in the past as a gift. So thank you. And I also think that those aren't necessarily Lydia gifts, but they're gifts from the spirit. And, that's just who God has me to be in this lifetime. And I'm happy
Hey, we
to own
kind of
it.
evolved together, we evolved together. What can
We're
I
all
say?
evolving, and it's actually never ending. So
Oh, isn't it though? Oof.
it's part of the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure is.
thank you so much. I'm so excited to share this on our platforms and let everybody get to know you and hear you. And I appreciate you saying yes when I asked you if you would be a guest. So
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Lydia. Thank you very much. You've been very patient with me and all my technological issues that I seem to have. So thank you very much for making this a comfortable and enjoyable experience. Thank you.
oh, awesome. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing you soon. So have a great day.
All right, you too. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. We've reached the end of this episode. If you'd like to continue with this inspirational journey, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. If you are a self-proclaimed oneness junkie, get yourself a t-shirt and spread the message of oneness in your community. And finally, if you have a story to share or know someone that should be a guest on this podcast, contact us at onenessjunkie.com. See you next time. And remember, when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. Compassion starts with you and me.